Okay. Okay. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry to bother you. Okay. I'll talk to you later. Thank you. Bye-bye. Get everybody in here. Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Up for me.
Yes.
Hey, for just everyone.
Hi there.
Michael. Crystal.
It looks like we have everyone that's joined, moved over except Nancy. And I think this might be everyone that we're expecting today. We'll wait till we get Nancy over and then we can start.
She's declined. When I promote her to panelist, she's declined. So, Nancy, if you're okay staying in the peanut gallery, that's fine.
Okay. Well, I will go ahead and call our meeting to order at 5:36. And before we step into the agenda, I just want to recognize Allison and her family and the gap that she's left us today and everything that she's going through. I know that she's in all of our hearts and minds, and that we here are a family. We've all grown so much together, and I've really appreciated that with all of you and her. So I know that all of us will do whatever we can to support her, whether that's, a message or a meal or whatever it might be. So thank you all. All right. Shifting gears. Is there anything that anyone else would like to say? Okay. Thank you. Public comment on non-agenda items. I don't think we have anyone other than Nancy in the public peanut gallery, so we can probably move forward. And approval of minutes. I didn't see any minutes in the packet, Fred, so I don't think we have any to consider today. Okay,
No, we don't. Yeah. And we're going to reach out to Rebecca and see, get those minutes going or start, work on those minutes. I know the city clerk's office has been in communication with her. So, we'll have to circle back and find out, what we can do to help get those minutes, prepared.
sure. Perfect. Okay. Let us know if there's anything we can do to help.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, and then we'll move right into our main agenda item, new business and code revisions and ADUs, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Nate. Thank you so much for preparing and facilitating this agenda topic.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your very thoughtful comments about Allison. I know just for the group that I believe the memorial service is planned for the 31st. So just FYI on that, and I can provide more information as I get it. In terms of the agenda, with Fred and his team, I was really fortunate that I had the opportunity to join the last city planning commission meeting. And so I had a bit of a preview, but it looks like, Fred, that your team's added even more great information to help provide the big picture in terms of scale and scope of this. So I'll pass the mic to you. I'm just excited that everyone is here to kind of share in this. I found it to be very valuable. So I'll pass the mic over to you, Fred. And Fred, I think you'll be able to share your slides and stuff, right? You can share the information that was in the packet to step us through.
Yes, I can. I can. I'm trying to I'm trying to get Nancy over. She said she can't, her screen is black. She can't see us, but she can hear us. So I'm not sure. Um I'm trying to promote her and it doesn't, I don't know what's going on. But it sounds like Nancy is having some technical difficulties and I don't know how to address them. Um,
Yeah, I'm looking to see if there's anything we can do as other panelists, but I don't see I have any options.
Can we hear Nancy if she has questions, or if she's not promoted, we can't hear questions from her?
see, let me try to.
Oh,
Oh,
Oh, there, it looks like she's on now.
you there, Nancy?
She's muted. Hopefully she can take it off mute.
Real quick, while we're waiting for her, is anyone recording minutes tonight?
I'll commit to helping with that.
And
I can do it, Nate. I mean, I've already started because I didn't think anyone was.
awesome,
You
thank you.
you let me know, Amy, if I can
Okay.
help you.
I got you. I've done it before, so.
And there is a recording, so I know in the past when we haven't had anyone do it live, they just
Yeah.
the recording and the transcript to develop it. So thank you, Amy.
Amy's our HAB hero. She always comes in and saves the day with notes and articles. She writes these brilliant things. It's wonderful. We are lucky to have you, Amy. Thank you.
Ditto.
Second that.
I really like this HAB hero concept, Crystal. I think they need to do a formal ordinance.
okay, let's see.
Is there a way we can send a message to Nancy?
Hello, Nancy.
Yes.
Hi. Well, I don't know what happened, but at least we have you on here and we can sounds like that you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you guys. I just can't, my screen is completely blank.
Okay. I don't know what's happening with that.
This will work though.
Okay. Let's see. Let me share my screen. Oops. What do I want to share first? Oof. Okay, let's see. Let's do this. Okay, so we're gonna do so what I'm gonna do is present the presentation that I made. Hold on, I'm sorry. I don't know if I can do this with the phone on, Nancy, because I'm getting a lot of feedback.
That's all right, turn me off.
Okay.
Continue to listen to you guys.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry about that. And I'll call Nancy back and see if she has any questions or anything like that after we're done with this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is present to you what we presented to the Planning Commission at their meeting a couple weeks ago. Um, what we did is we presented them with kind of a rough mock-up of what a potential regulation could look like for accessory dwelling units, and something actually for them to bat around and talk about and everything like that. And so we had some very good conversation, and let's see, um, at the end of the meeting, the Planning Commission wanted to see an actual draft ordinance, and they wanted to see that draft ordinance before they had a public hearing. So what's going to happen at the August meeting is we're going to have another work session with Planning Commission in August to look at a draft ordinance with the anticipation that we're going to hold a public hearing probably in September at their September meeting where they can make a recommendation to City Council. Then I would expect we could take that to City Council either at the end of September or beginning of October. Um, so this is the presentation that I made, and I will go through that. So this is our code revisions. It's our part three. This was the Planning Commission's third working session on it, and I just went back and talked about the code sections that the Planning Commission wanted to review. They want to review more than just the 2024 state land use and housing legislation, which we're doing right now. They also want to review our variance criteria as well as our zoning district densities, which would also have an effect on the ability to build housing in Manitou Springs. So those are going to be forthcoming once we're a little bit more squared away with the first one with the state land use and housing legislation. Right now, as I had said in the last, I provided a recap, and in the last meeting, we had looked at the three pieces of legislation that affect Manitou, and that's House Bill 1007, 1152, and 1304. And so we're going to be providing draft ordinances for all three. Um, as I told everybody at the last meeting, House Bill 1313, which is about transit-oriented communities, does not apply to any area within Manitou, so no action is required. So we don't have to worry about that. But this working session that I held with Planning Commission this month, we just focused on a potential ordinance for accessory dwelling units because that was the big thing. So with just as a reminder, this is a little bit more reminder under accessory dwelling units. The state law that passed allows or actually requires ADUs for all municipalities of 1,000 people or more in population and within a metropolitan organization, which we were triggered by that. It also requires ADUs. It requires ADUs as a use by right, accessory to any single unit detached dwelling unit or single family dwelling unit in any zoning district that allows single family dwelling units. They also indicated the HOA rules, if they exist, that are more restrictive than these rules are now void. The city, there's some things that they say the city may not do. One is we may not require new off-street parking spaces except for under a couple circumstances. One, when no existing off-street parking exists. Um, and if it is in a zoning district that requires one or more spaces for primary dwelling units, and if it is located on a street where on-street parking is prohibited. So all three of those things must exist in order for us to require off-street parking for ADUs. Otherwise, we cannot do that. So that will be addressed also in the draft ordinance. We cannot require an ADU or primary dwelling unit on the same lot to be owner occupied. In other words, we have to allow the, excuse me, we must allow the ADU or the primary dwelling to be rented out long term, not for short term, not like a short term rental, but for long term. And that's the intent of the law. That's the intent of the legislation, is to allow more housing, whether it be housing for sale or housing for rent. Also, we may not apply restrictive design or dimension standards that would not otherwise be required for the primary dwelling. So what that means is we can't add more design standards or dimension standards or special conditions that we would not otherwise impose on the single family dwelling on the same property. So we have to treat them the same. Then I indicated how do we comply with this bill. What we need to do is insert under residential uses that we would need to insert an ADU as a use that is accessory to a single household dwelling. What we can do and what we're proposing to do is that the development standards currently in the land use and development code would apply to ADUs just like they would apply to single family dwellings. We also include the requirement that we have one on-site parking space um, um, in accordance with the law. We would have to put that in the ordinance, and we're going to plan to do that. We can apply the historic preservation regulations to ADUs. So that's what we're proposing. And so if an ADU is being proposed in the historic district, that we would treat them the same as a single family dwelling under the historic preservation regulations. We are recommending that the short-term rental of the ADU be prohibited. And because generally with the idea that if we allow short-term rentals in ADUs, that kind of defeats the purpose of allowing ADUs for housing. We do have to, we can allow almost any size of ADU but that's something that we have the ability to regulate. However, we do have to require ADUs up to 750 square feet in size. And that's all that we have to do, but we can allow larger ADUs if we would like. And then, of course, compliance with all applicable fire codes, building codes, things like that would apply. So what we provided to the Planning Commission was this kind of like a cheat sheet that kind of describes what a potential ordinance would look like, and I'll get into that. I'll go into those separately. So we would
I have
include.
a quick question before we get too far, and I
Sure.
might be just a little bit behind on this, but I think on the first slide, there was language that says allows for ADUs and then language that also said requires. Uh, which is it?
Is it on this slide that we're
I
looking
think
at
the
right now?
previous one.
Oh, I see. So what we're oh, this was sorry about that. Yeah, let me clarify. This was a summary of House Bill 1182. So 1182 um, includes or provides a land use regulation that allows ADUs for all municipalities of 1,000 or more. Um,
So is
and
that something that we can make a decision on, or it requires us to allow
it requires,
ADUs?
thank you, good clarification. It requires us to allow ADUs.
That's wild. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Good. Yes, excellent question. Okay, so what we would include would be, of course, a definition of what an accessory dwelling unit is, and that it would be one thing that we are required to allow is an ADU that could be internal to the primary dwelling unit, attached to the primary dwelling unit, or detached as a separate structure on the site. And so that's what would be under the definition. It would, in order to make sure that you're not able to convert a shed into like a bedroom or something like that. We did explain, or we're proposing in the definition, that it be the ADU have complete independent living facilities um, that would be located on the same lot, and includes facilities for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. So you're not just, like I said, converting a shed to a bedroom or something and saying that that's an ADU. Where are ADUs allowed? ADUs, we are required to allow ADUs wherever in any zoning district that allows for single family dwellings. So those are three zoning districts in the city of Manitou: general residential, low density residential, and the hillside low density residential zoning district. And I've got some maps that will show you where they're located. We would recommend, at least at this time, that only one ADU be allowed per single family dwelling unit. We cannot apply density restrictions to ADUs. So what that means is if we require 4,400 square feet for a dwelling unit, we cannot require an additional 4,400 square feet if you're going to put an ADU on the property. We have to allow the ADU as an accessory use, regardless of the size of the lot. How big can ADUs be? I touched on this a little bit earlier. What we're proposing is basically what we are required to do by the law, and that's allow between an ADU between 500 and 750 square feet. Again, we can allow ADUs that are bigger than that, and there could be some discussion with the Planning Commission on that when they see the ordinance next month. But there wasn't a whole lot of discussion this month, and they seem to be on board with just requiring that ADUs to be no larger than 750 square feet. We're also indicating that ADUs must comply with setbacks and height restrictions, just like the regular single-family dwelling would need to apply. So let's see. Again, what can my ADU look like? We are indicating that Chapter 17, the historic district standards must, ADUs must comply with the historic district's ordinance. And then where can I build an ADU on my property? Basically indicating that ADUs must comply with the setbacks of the zoning district, the height restrictions, other development standards that are applicable to the property. One of the things, one of the development standards that's applicable to development on property that really has quite a big effect on us in Manitou is our no build areas. We do not allow development on slopes of greater than 30%. And that actually kicks a lot of land out from development for ADUs. And again, I've got some mapping that I'm going to show regarding that. And then can I rent out my ADU? This is regarding short-term rentals, that you cannot apply for a short-term rental license for the ADU, which means that you can rent an ADU out for a duration more than 30 days. That's considered long-term use or long-term residency.
Fred, can I ask a question on the last slide?
Sure.
Is there a reason, so sorry, one slide back, is there a reason why we wouldn't want to allow ADUs smaller than 500 square feet? I'm sitting actually right now in a 450 square foot ADU with plenty of space. It's, permanent kitchen, cooking, sleeping, sanitation.
I'm not exactly sure I'm not completely sure the intent, but I know that there are some communities that require minimum sizes for homes depending on the zoning district. And there are some communities that actually have a floor for how big you can build a residence. We don't have that in Manitou. And so I think that's why why state law had said you can allow, you must allow ADUs between 500 and 750 square feet. We can allow, again, just like we can allow ADUs larger than 750 square feet, we can also allow ADUs smaller than 500 square feet if we would like.
Yeah, great. Well, I would propose that we consider that as part of the ordinance and allow the habitability code requirements. And I recall that there was something we needed to do to address that established the minimum square foot per person, but have that kind of dictate what can be constructed, because like there's a lot of really creative designs smaller than 500 square feet. And so I think we should allow for that creativity. And also, on some of these, like low density residential zones where we've got a lot of space and really big primary residences, perhaps considering a percentage of the larger residence as the upper limit. So just some thoughts to throw out and make sure that those get captured in the conversations.
Okay, thank you. Good point. Any other questions at this point?
Yeah, my question was on the next slide.
Okay.
Can both the ADU and the primary residence be rented out by an owner that lives in anywhere else?
For long-term, yes. Currently, we don't. Currently, we do not have any restrictions on any single-family dwelling to be owner occupied. We just require that it can't be rented out in the short term, which is less than 30 days. So any of us can rent out our house in Manitou to a renter, to somebody to live there for more than 30 days. And under this draft ADU ordinance, it would be the same way with the ADU and or the single family dwelling on that same property. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. And then utilities, we need we're going to get some more information this week. Actually, I have a meeting with our water and sewer folks tomorrow. I don't know what the utilities situation is right now, but we need to specify how ADUs are going to be hooked up to utilities, primarily water and sewer. Um, right now, we have two choices. Either we could require a separate tap for water and sewer, or we could allow an ADU to tap into the existing tap of the single family home. Um, Before staff is able to provide any kind of recommendation on that, we need to talk with the water and sewer folks to find out what things we need to think about with each of those alternatives and what might be the best alternative for the city as well as the best alternative for property owners. So that information will be forthcoming next month. And then the approval process for ADUs. We are required to review and approve ADUs administratively. So in other words, we cannot require that they be approved in a public hearing before a planning commission or a city council. So part of the draft ordinance would be that ADUs would be administratively approved through our minor site plan process, which is how we approve single-family dwellings. That's an administrative process where we review the site plan against the city's development standards and then either approve or not approve the minor site plan. Also, a grading and erosion control plan would be required, just like a single-family dwelling. Grading erosion control plan and permit is for excavation of the site and making sure that excavation meets the city's standards. And then, of course, building permit from Pikes Peak Regional Building Department is required, as well as design approval from the Historic Preservation Commission if in the historic district. Okay. So what we found, here's where we get to the fun stuff. And if Nancy still can't see, I apologize. Nancy, I'm going to send you this PowerPoint presentation because we've got some really good mapping that hopefully puts things in perspective. For accessory dwelling units, what we did some analysis, and we found, first of all, we wanted to understand what's the scope? What could we reasonably understand the scope of this issue, or what properties could potentially be affected by this ordinance. Because, there are some people that, would not like additional density, that would not like the idea of additional dwelling units in their neighborhood. There are other folks that really embrace that. But really, what does this mean for the city of Manitou? So first of all, we identified the total number of single family units in the three zoning districts that we are required to allow ADUs. So that's general residential, low density residential, and hillside low density residential. So we found that there's 1,600, little over 1,600 dwelling units in those three zoning districts. So that's what we have right now. And this is a map that shows where those zoning districts are located. The orange color is the general residential. We've got about 895 dwelling units in the general residential zoning district. That includes a good chunk of the historic district and the older part of Manitou. The single family, the low density residential zoning district, or that is in yellow, has about 672 single family dwelling units. And that's focused mostly on the east side of town, along in Crystal Hills and Crystal Park, as well as the Villas north of El Paso Boulevard, as well as and then also a small area right off on Pawnee, on the far south side going up towards Red Mountain. So this is what the layout of these zoning districts are. So this is where we're proposing that that the ADUs be allowed. We do not have to require them in our commercial zoning districts or our multifamily zoning districts because those zoning districts already allow for multifamily units and higher densities. So then what we did is we did we did an analysis and we asked ourselves, okay, how many garages and how many garages and how many basements are there in these areas that could potentially be converted to an ADU? These aren't the only alternatives for conversion, but we thought, what just generally speaking, what would that look like? Um, so we found, hold on, let me pull up another statistic here. So what we found is that there's about there's about 468 units in that 468 residences that has a garage that's greater than 500 square feet. It- and we also found that there's about 719 dwellings that have a basement greater than 500 square feet. So that's quite a bit. There's quite a bit of existing space that could be converted into ADUs without building any more square footage, without building any more structures or anything like that. So 719 plus 468, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, that's about 1100. That's quite a bit out of the 1628 dwelling units. Um, let's see.
I guess there could be some overlap there, though, that they both have a garage and a basement greater than 500 square feet.
Yes, you're correct. That is correct. And I'm sure there's quite a few homes that have basements and garages. And if we limit to just one ADU per property, then yeah, you wouldn't be able to convert your basement and your garage out to ADUs. You'd have to choose one or the other. With this one, let's see. Oh, yeah, this is in the other zoning. So this map, what I'm showing you right now, this is in the LDR and HDLR zoning districts and where those parcels are that have garages and basements. So some more information on that. Um, let's see. And this is what I'm showing right now is just the numbers. So total number of single unit dwellings, 616.28. There's about 468 that have garages greater than 500 square feet. There's about 719 units that have basements greater than 500 square feet. So that gives you a lot of space or a lot of room or a lot of developed space that could be converted. We went a step further, and one thing that we looked at were development constraints and what our development standards would require or allow or not allow. One of the things that I talked about before, one of the things that we have that would have a pretty big effect on where you can build is our no build areas or those areas on slopes of greater than 30%. Our land use and development code does not allow development on slopes of greater than 30%. So we asked ourselves, where is that located? And so what you see in this slide in red are those lots and those areas would be considered no build areas. And that takes out quite a bit of land um, from being able to build on.
For Fred, for detached ADUs specifically, meaning you could have a single family residence with a garage with a 30% grade, and could you build the integrated ADU?
Yeah, so what this means is if you wanted to build a separate building, yes, a separate structure on your parcel and it's in a no build area, we would say no, you can't do that. However, if you want to convert existing space that's already there, that would be permitted. Does that I hope, does that answer your question?
Perfect.
Okay. So in looking at that no build areas, what we did is we kind of dug a little bit deeper to find out how many lots this would affect. So out of the 1,628 lots, only 130 lots have no slopes of over 30%. So no obstruction at all. That's pretty small. That's about 8% of the lots. But we did acknowledge that, even if you have some space on your lot that's less than 30%, you could potentially build on it. So we asked ourselves how many lots um, have at least less than 500 square feet of no build area, which means that you could have some space on your lot, at least 500 square feet, that you could put an ADU. There would be a new structure. And that comes out to about 21% or about 350 lots. So, what's the point of this? The point is that we're pretty limited based on our topography and our development standards. We're pretty limited for the number of new structures to be built on for ADUs in those areas where we must allow them. That's it.
Just to clarify, Fred,
Yep.
so of the 1628, 350 out of the 1628 could potentially build a detached ADU.
Yeah, a detached ADU of at least 500 square feet.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Obviously this is not survey accurate. We used a lot of GIS data and data from the U.S. Census and things like that. And there's always some inconsistencies. There's always some, it's not survey accurate. So we use the best data that we had to put this together. There's always going to be some nuance to this data. Um, but I guess what we realized and what the takeaway of all this is that there appeared to be more opportunity to either retrofit existing homes or convert existing space to an ADUs than to build new space or new structures as ADUs. We're pretty restricted based on our development standards and our topography. And development standards also include setbacks and things like that. Um, we're going to be pretty restricted in how many ADUs could actually, separate ADU structures could actually be constructed. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing here for now, and I can always go back to those. I can always go back to those maps. And Nancy, I'm going to send everybody the PowerPoint presentation so everybody can take a look at those maps.
Fred, as part of your presentation in the packet, you had a couple of neat visuals. I don't know if you were prepared to show those today or speak to them. They were the ADU diagrams. Are you
Yeah.
able to just narrate those a little bit? I think it may be valuable for the group.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. We also did some diagrams of a lot, kind of a standard size lot and how you could fit an ADU. Let's see, let me see if I can pull that up. I'm gonna have to get into the, oops. Bear with me. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, can everybody see this? So, and I'll go through this, but this kind of gives you an idea of kind of what it would, and this is kind of a standard rectangular sized lot. Um, so this first diagram shows, potential location of a primary residence that would be in conformance with setbacks and everything, with a driveway in the front, a porch or a deck of some kind in the back. Um, and then the next diagram is showing, uh, the space, and this is for, let's see if we have, this is, this would be on a, looks like, oh, low density residential, though. So this diagram would be on an 8,700 square foot lot, uh, with a two-story residence with an ADU on it in conformance with setbacks and everything. In what, how it could work, how something like that could work. So the black is your primary residence, the blue is your ADU. Setbacks are in gray. So that's the setbacks that you would not be able to build in. And then driveway would be that brick, that brick design up on top. Um, and then let's see. And then if we go on the narrow side, if we go, this is a 440 square foot lot where it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but you have a primary residence of um, about 2,200 square feet, one story. It takes up quite a bit of the lot, or most of the parcel of a 4,400 square foot lot. In order to squeeze an ADU on a 4,400 square foot lot, with a 2,200 square foot residence, the primary residence would need to be two stories. If you do two stories, then you've got adequate space for an ADU in the back, in conformance with setbacks and everything like that. Um, but as I had said before, if just a 4,400 square foot lot, if you want a primary residence of roughly 2,000 square feet, one story, that's going to take up pretty much most of your lot. And so there's not going to be much room for an ADU. So that kind of gives you, hopefully that gives you a little bit of visual of what things could look like on two lots. One is a 4,400 square foot lot, which is the minimum required for in our general residential zoning district, and then an 8,700 square foot lot, which is the minimum required in our low density residential zoning district. Okay. So that's a lot of information. Are there any, I guess maybe, are there any initial questions or anything that I can answer?
I have a question about, I know that this was heard, or it sounds like this was heard at city council last night and regarding an emergency ordinance for ADUs. And so maybe I didn't entirely follow what that schedule is and how that ties in here. And so maybe an update on that, and then kind of more broadly the timeline that we are working within to adopt something.
Yep, that's a good question. So what we did is there was some concern from some city council members who about our I guess, not being in conformance with state law at this time. The state law, the ADU requirements required us to come into conformance by June 30th of this year. And so Planning Commission, Planning Commission and staff have been working very deliberately on this, as you know, as well as this group, the HAB, has been working on this for a while. It's not like that we've been slacking off or anything like that. But we've been taking our time in making sure that we're doing this right. And it was our intention to have an ordinance adopted by this time. It didn't happen. So what we did, or what we were able to do, is adopt an emergency ordinance to make sure that we are in conformance with state law right now. In the meantime, while the Planning Commission is considering a final ordinance, or a final draft ordinance that it would actually recommend to the City Council. But with an emergency ordinance, it does not require to be publicly noticed, the hearing. It does not require a planning commission recommendation. It doesn't require a second reading. It's an ordinance that's adopted in terms of emergency, and that's defined what an emergency is. And so that's what the city council did last night, to make sure that we were in conformance with state law, um, to avoid that conflict. And then that will give us time, the Planning Commission time, to go through these particular details and provide a solid recommendation.
Fred, it may be helpful for Eliad. Amy and I were actually there last night. It was a really good meeting. On Julie Wolf had mentioned, I think, wanted language added around the off-street parking. It may be helpful for the group just to hear your perspective around that.
Yeah, so actually Julie was very good at identifying one of the things that's required of us, one of the restrictions actually in the law that restricts our ability to require off-street parking for ADUs. And so if we applied our current parking requirements onto ADUs, we would technically not be in conformance with state law. Even though we wouldn't do that, if somebody wanted to apply for an ADU tomorrow, we would not apply our current parking requirements. Rather, we would follow state law. But just to be safe, just to be on the safe side, city council went ahead and incorporated the restrictions that are in state law into the emergency ordinance. And that's what I had explained a little while ago about we can, as a community, we can require off-street parking, one off-street parking space for an ADU if three conditions exist. And those three conditions include, number one, our ordinance requires off-street parking for single-family residences. I'm locating that right now so I say this right. Where is it? If we can require one off-street parking space for an ADU when, number one, no existing off-street parking exists. Number two, it's in a zoning district that requires an off-street parking space for a primary dwelling. And if it's located on a street where on-street parking is prohibited. So those three things have to exist in order for us to require an off-street parking space. If one or more of those things do not exist, then we can't require any off-street parking at all. And so that's what was put in the emergency ordinance last night to make sure that we're in conformance with that part of the law.
I
So I
thought
have a
another, oh, I'm sorry, Amy. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nate.
Passing the mic to you.
So I was there last night, but it still was really confusing, like the parking thing was confusing because I'm just a delayed processor. It takes me a while to absorb everything and understand. And so I just want you to clarify, Fred, please. So what we were saying with the short-term rentals and the parking is like to the state with the emergency ordinances, like we already have this built into our code and here's the proof. So we can't, because it's already built into our code, we can't conform, right? Because we already had the no short-term rental into our code and these 3 parking caveats into our code. And that's what Councilwoman Wolf was saying, like, hey, we should just prove why we can't. Is that what I'm understanding?
So the reason we have that, so now that the ordinance is adopted, it is now what was adopted last night as part of the code, as part of the Land Use and Development Code, which expressly allows ADUs and allows allows uh, uh, does not restrict those things that the state law does not allow us to restrict. I hope that makes sense. But
Does
yeah,
anyone
it's to
follow
sh
what I'm saying? Am I
say that again.
am I the only one that's confused about this? Like I'm trying to say, like, so the reason we're allowed to prohibit short-term rentals and this parking thing is because it was already in our code.
So the state law allows us to prohibit short-term rentals.
Okay. But
Um,
not parking.
correct. The law restricts our ability to require off-street parking for ADUs, new off-street parking or more off-street parking.
I think. Okay.
So, so what we do right now is if you want to build a single family home, you have to provide a certain number of spaces for that single family home on the lot, on the property. What the ADU law says is that we can't do that. We cannot require off-street parking or additional off-street parking spaces for the ADU unless those 3 conditions exist that I went through. And it is it is confusing.
Yeah,
But
because at the
it's
meeting I was like, why wouldn't we encourage people to not use a car in a small dwelling? That's what I felt. It was like, now I
yeah.
see.
Yeah, it probably, I think in cases that, I mean, there's neighborhoods in Manitou that have parking issues, real parking issues, on-street parking issues. And so, um, yeah, we don't have to require off-street parking for anything if we don't want to. We can change our ordinances that way, but in order to address the parking issue or address the congestion in some of our neighborhoods, we do require off-street parking. So yeah, I think the state acknowledges what you're saying, Amy, that why should we require off-street parking for every single dwelling unit that we want to encourage, especially if it's along transit.
I guess the issue is if this is not done in conjunction with a transit plan, then we do just end up with our streets full of more cars, which, yeah, at least where we live is a potential issue. Like that, am I missing something that this is not a pretty big issue in terms of congestion and infrastructure?
Yeah, yeah. So what I'm hearing is and that's yeah, that's theoretically you should be able to reduce the amount of parking demand if you're near a transit area or if you're near a transit station of some kind. Theoretically, you could be able to do that. And there are communities that do that, that if you, the closer you are to a transit station or transit line, reduce the need for, reduce the requirements for parking, for off-street parking. Um, that doesn't always shake out, but that's kind of the theory that a lot of communities are or a number of communities are taking in their ordinances.
Michael, do you want to expand on, I'm sensing some concern.
You're muted.
You're muted, Mike.
Thank you. This seems to be something that is kind of being forced upon the community here, without any concern for the unique needs of Manitou, and is not something that in a unique community like Manitou is going to address housing affordability. So I think, yeah, from the board's point of view, this is pretty concerning, in my opinion.
What was very interesting, I'll mention at the meeting last night, and I didn't appreciate this, and Fred, you may have more background and context, was that Mayor John had mentioned that he, along with some peers, I don't know if it was additional council members, had actually pushed back on the state law, like many communities have done. So it's one thing if you're Colorado Springs with 96 square miles, and it's an entirely different equation for what you're describing, a town of 3 square miles. And so this is one of those classic things. I think I had mentioned this to Councilwoman Nancy in an email that I think some of us were copied on. Was it's a classic, in my view, the intent and spirit of the law to increase housing stock is good, I think, the intent. The potential impact, which I think Fred now has done a wonderful job with giving us real data around what the potential impact could be, in my view, is one of the more consequential issues that I think city planning and the council will deal with. And I'll use a quick example if it's helpful, just to give you a sense of how I'm thinking about it. So my wife and I live in a small little residential community up by Crystal Valley Cemetery, and this is completely separate from my advocacy and passion for affordable housing for different target populations. I'm decoupling that from my sentiment. I'm just giving you an illustrative example. My neighbors lived here my next door neighbors lived here for 40 years. And they have a small little picnic area outside to their house. They've helped build the community. They're integrated in the community. So the prospect for me and my wife to build a single detached ADU where our friend and neighbor would come out and sit at their picnic table and look at the side of an ADU when they're used to 40 years looking and seeing nature and stuff. I only share that to say that for us, if we contemplated an ADU, it would likely be an integrated ADU that wouldn't potentially impact, Michael, what I think you're saying is the character of the community that the people have built here, which is not high car density and high population density. So I'm feeling much more encouraged that we have data now around the potential impact. But my concern in light of very opportunistic corporate developers, I view this as a big win for them, not in a cynical way. If you're a developer, this is an amazing opportunity. But I wanted to share that with the group. And Fred, I don't know if you were part of, I just picked up that nuance with Mayor John last night. I didn't realize that there was pushback. I don't know if it was at the Manitou level, at the mayoral level, etc. Do you
No,
remember, Fred?
do I well, I
Oh, you
mean,
may not have been. I mean, were you in the seat? You weren't in the seat.
no, you're talking about last, you mean last night or before?
Last night, Mayor John had mentioned that there was some pushback, and I don't know if that was sort of a cohesive pushback from the town, but I don't, I only mention that to the group to say, look, there's a lot of municipalities that have pushed back against
Oh, yeah.
the state law. For Michael, the reasons that you had mentioned, this is independent of whether one supports affordable housing or not, which I do. So
Yeah, and there's been various I guess ways of pushback. There's currently a legal challenge by I think it's five suburbs, five communities in the Denver metro area. They've started a legal challenge against the state regarding this. You know, I'm unclear. I don't know how many communities have chosen to comply with the law. Some might not have. Some might have chosen not to comply with it at all. I'm not exactly familiar with that. I did have a conversation with a planner for the city of Colorado Springs yesterday to understand the status of their ADU ordinance. There's a few things they did adopt an ADU ordinance and do allow them, but there's a few restrictions in their ordinance that do not appear to be in conformance with the law. Nevertheless, the state accepted their ordinance when they submitted it, which I thought was interesting. So it's yeah, there's a number of things that are going on that don't make uh, um, this plan, black and white, if that makes sense. So in light of that, I wanted to say from a planner's perspective, what we're trying to do is make sure that we have an ordinance that at least, that will hopefully achieve our goals as a city, regardless, regardless of what the state is telling us what to do or what not to do.
Fred, it looks like Michael and Amy have questions.
And Amy, I think you had your hand
Oh,
up first. You had just put it down. Okay. Two quick things. Just in terms of the legal challenges, curious if that is something that Manitou's looking at. Specifically, I find issue with the idea of someone that lives in California that owns property here is able to now completely change the nature of this community, not live here, can rent out the primary residence and the ADU, um, without any say from the people that live in this city. That seems very strange to me, and that the state is able to force that down. Um, it seems very odd to me. So maybe that's something that I'm misunderstanding, but I'm curious about.
To my knowledge, no, I don't believe. To my knowledge, right now, the city is not pursuing any kind of legal action or anything on our own. Most small communities don't due to budget issues, lack of budget, or lack of financial ability to take on a legal challenge. Um, I would say, there's nothing stopping people from out of state or out of the area purchasing current homes, eh, current single family homes, and then renting them out. Um, I mean, that could be done. That could be potentially be done right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that either. So,
Um,
but by again, this density, I think the issue with density in the ADUs and congestion, which kind of brings up the next question. Is there been any analysis done on evacuation for wildfire risk? Or like what is there? any thought about that or pushback regarding fire evacuation?
Yeah, there's some wildfire protection plans that are in place, not specific to ADUs, but the city does have some plans. I was going to pull that up. Let's see. Under
Well,
hazard.
maybe if you send out the slides, maybe if you could just send that. I don't want to take any more time. I
Okay.
appreciate that everyone has questions and comments.
Okay, yeah, we do have, but the city does have a hazard mitigation plan that talks about evacuation or the need for evacuation. There are no specific evacuation routes. The fire department has asserted that it can't predetermine evacuation routes due to wildfire or something like that because it's going to depend on the nature of the fire at the time and of the hazard and where it's located. But we do have a hazard mitigation plan. There's a wildfire protection plan that I just noticed was recently advertised, and I'll provide links. I can provide links to that to everybody so you can take a look at those documents.
Thank you so
So,
much.
Fred, I'm just trying to help facilitate the question. So Amy had a question, then Crystal, then Aaliyah. So
Okay.
So, Michael, just so you know, the mayor did address evacuation being a concern last night and that they were going to talk about it in a work session. So, something positive for you. And I do think that they're very aware of evacuation issues and congestion. Just being a resident here of 11 years, there has never been a conversation that hasn't had anything to do with parking or congestion that I've ever attended. I mean, I've never attended a meeting, I swear, Scouts Honor, that didn't mention parking or congestion. So I'm sure it's at everybody's mindset. But what I wanted to talk about a little bit was, after going to the meeting last night, I sat with all of my feelings, okay? And I came into some acceptance about how we can make this mandatory, okay? And my homework was incentives. And so I did some digging today because I was supposed to go somewhere and then the rain canceled my plans. But anyway, what we can do is incentivize like the right builds, the builds that we as a community want. Number one, housing elders. I don't think that there's anyone on this board or any commission or the city council that would disagree with that. Offering rent at below 80% AMI and signing a 10-year community covenant that kind of recommends these types of things. Like we're looking for people who either are aging in place or taking care of people who are aging in place. And so that could be a caregiver. It could be a young person who's a caregiver who's just riding bikes, or it could be someone who's aging in place. So they would receive faster reviews, permit fee waivers. I have this all written down. I can send it. Slightly expanded height or size options, public recognition, which sometimes that's kind of cool. Build with care and the city will support you. I wrote some proof of concepts here from like Portland, Ashland, what they did with like fee waivers for and covenants for just like I've called this little plan because you guys know I have a history in marketing, homes with purpose. And so there's some takeaways from Portland, and Ashland, I believe. And then there was some stuff in Boulder as well. But none of them are going to be Manitou. So we'd have to take a little bit of what they did. Like Ashland did a little bit of streamline ADU fee waivers for affordability. Portland did it for the elder-friendly ADU covenants. But national findings do support the ADUs in aging in place, preserve housing stock. So that is a positive for Michael and for all of us. Just trying to be positive tonight. So ADU homes for people, not portfolios. These are some of my marketing things. One thing I did notice from and I'm almost done, guys. One thing I did notice from the planning commission was some concerns that I had not heard of that I wanted to see the validity. And there are some short-term rental loopholes that basically people, it's a short-term rental look back. So basically you are building an ADU, then you go live in it, and then short-term rental your big house or some kind of loophole. But it sounded like the planning commission was on top of that. But I just wanted to, if they weren't, Fred, like I'm in support of any, closing any loophole, especially like nobody in council wants to see an ADU as a short-term rental, period, dot. And then we can restrict, no towering investor builds. Like we do have some abilities here to kind of mold the laws, as you saw we did with the parking and we did with the no short-term rentals. So we can still do that with no towering investor builds. We can kind of do that with height caps. And then there was some cities that did prevent view blocking overbuilds. So there's precedent for that. And I know that was some of the concern in the planning commission when we met jointly. And my thing is like, I don't want there to be a sour taste in the community about ADUs. I mean, we're really looking at 350 places here. So let's just explain it how it can be beneficial. And not pretending that these concerns don't exist, but say like, this is how we can shape it to make it homes with a purpose.
Thanks, Amy. Crystal.
Well, I'm happy to let Aaliyah go first because I'm pretty sure she was up before I did.
I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, my one comment with just all of this, like there's a lot, like Michael brought up something that I hear a lot as, these outside people and who have purchased these places. And I'm just like, I think we need to get some roots in what's really on the ground versus feeding into some of those fears because there's there's a whole wide variety of why there are people who live out of town that still have a home here. Like I know one that it's their family home and they don't want to get rid of it and they're not doing anything negative with it. So I think before we make any assumptions about what's going to happen, like I really appreciate Fred how your team went in and found like this is kind of what we're looking at as a potential, but I really question some of the information about, all the out of town investors. Like, I know that that is happening a lot, especially with businesses, it feels like, but I don't know about like that Manitou housing is getting overrun with that. So I would just want to see some evidence about that.
Yeah, I think those are great.
I-
Yeah, do you want to?
Yeah, I was gonna say I definitely appreciate the perspective, Amy and Crystal. Thank you. I know it can be a bit alarmist sometimes. I don't have evidence per se of this I guess outside investment, but knowing that we do have our population is bimodal, and we will have an aging population that presumably children who are out of town will own those homes. And I want to make sure that we're thinking about this long term, not just for the next 5, 10 years. So that is a challenge that the community will face in the future.
Yeah, I agree. Those are good points. And so I think, really digging into what you brought up, Amy, and thank you for doing some of that initial research. I think that is a really excellent thing for us to continue to do, even, beyond, I think we have a longer runway to come up with solutions and ideas to support and encourage the right type of ADUs and affordable ADUs and ADUs that are housing the people in the way that we envision. One just point of context to remind everyone, we allow ADUs in Manitou today. There's just a minimum lot size. You know, this isn't a totally new thing. It's just expanding the number of lots and where this would be allowed and some of the restrictions around it. I think one of, you know, Fred, thank you for all that analysis you did. I think one interesting data point would be, you know, for the detached builds would be what percentage of lots have, you know, say at least 500 square feet of area that is not in a no build zone, if I said that right. Which maybe you provided that, but I think I interpreted it a little bit differently. And that might tell us, okay, how many places actually have 500 square feet that can be built on. But then you layer on, and you brought this up, then you layer on our existing zoning requirements with setbacks and lot coverage. And I don't think we're going to get, you know, a full answer of how many lots really can be built on. But I think when you just kind of layer all those things, the conclusion is like there's probably not a ton opportunity, and maybe it's really in the lots where we already allow it today, right? It's just easing those restrictions a little bit. So I continue to believe that this is an important strategy for building more units in Manitou, but it's not a super impactful one. Like I just don't think that we're gonna see a ton of new builds. I think we'll probably see more conversions, but still probably not a lot. And that's, you know, that's a very different proposition where you're not looking at the opportunity for commercial investors to come in and, you know, convert your existing space, or it's definitely not as appetizing there. So it was just a few thoughts I had.
I think those are great, and I would add, and I think you all kind of get where I'm coming from in terms of like having as clinical a forecast of what the possibilities may be, because I think the education to support the public hearing is going to be so critical. And Fred, your team's really helped with that, to echo Aaliyah's point. The one thing that I think would also be useful to help refine the forecasts with better precision or the scale would be like a housing survey. And I think, Aaliyah, maybe you had done something like this in your original work. So I don't think it has to be complicated, but in your analysis, Fred, you know, for those 350 single family residences that could potentially build a detached ADU, to somehow quantify what level of interest there would be. It just would provide a bit more teeth behind what the possibility may be. So it's a little less spidey senses in terms of what that forecast may be. And then the other piece, so that's the housing survey that I would propose. And please, if others on the call think it's a bad idea and challenge it, we'll celebrate the differences. And then the other piece that I think is really important around the forecasting, the education for our neighbors, is ways to finance an ADU, to have very clear, whether that's government, whether that's new incentive programs that Amy was describing, So then they have the full kind of 360 view of what the future state of Manitou may look like and what their neighborhood may look like. So I'll pause there. Crystal, passing the mic to you.
So, shoot. One of the things that I think is a reality in our community and what we are really risking, and I hear your concerns, Michael. Like, my big concern is Manitou is becoming a place where only the elite can afford to live. And for me, I'm like, that is the most anti-Manitou thing I can possibly think of. And so, like, the ADUs helps us to get rentals, that maybe smaller families could afford, or doing the thing where, like, an elderly person in place they move into the ADU and rent out their house to a family, a younger start family at maybe a lower cost. Like, I am so grateful for all the work that you did on that, Amy, because you came up with a lot of great stuff already. And so, like, I just think for me, that's always my challenge of because in my neighborhood, at least, I feel like I am seeing all of this super expensive shit going up that violates everything, all the arguments I hear about low income housing, like it's too tall, it blocks the view. Well, they just totally messed up Becker's Lane with really expensive 3-story condos or whatever. So, like, I don't know. I feel like we just got to keep focused and trying to keep remembering or maybe doing a survey of what is it about Manitou that we want to preserve. Because I may be the only weirdo who's like, no, I don't want it being a bunch of elite people. But, and so that's just the way the world is. I don't know. Sorry.
Crystal, I am elite, but my bank account is not. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to interject real quickly before you go, Michael, just with a quick time check, because we're an hour and a half in, and I know the board has expressed that like to keep meetings to about an hour and a half. And this is such an amazing conversation, and I'm happy to continue it for a bit. But if people do want to try and move on here, so maybe we kind of have our last comments or two, and then kind of discuss next steps.
Yeah, and I actually do have to jump to another call here at 7. I just wanted to say, Crystal, definitely appreciate that. I think the goal is always to keep Manitou to be a unique community. My concern would just be that as we see in cities across the country, that just because a place is small, if it's a location where people want to be, then you're still going to have people willing to pay a premium. And if we don't have some type of restriction or, like Amy was saying, some incentive programs, I think we'll still end up with that, even if it is an ADU. Yeah, I've really appreciated the conversation and all of the perspective from everyone. I do need to drop though, so thank you. Have a good night.
Also, Aaliyah, I did get Nancy sent an email about some of her updates, some of her council updates, if the board is interested.
Hold on. I was on mute. Nate, is there anything else you want to address in this agenda item? And should we just quickly talk about what we should be doing as next steps and what planning department next steps are?
Sure, sure. If you want to tie it up, I love the perspectives. Yeah, were there specific action items that Aaliyah you heard that we could move forward with?
Well, I think, maybe at our next meeting, we could dig into some of the research that Amy started looking at and talking more about how we can support and facilitate that side of it, the affordability side of ADU construction, the financing side. Fred, what are the next steps for you and planning commission and city council?
Yeah, right now, the next step, the Planning Commission asked for us to basically prepare a draft ordinance, a draft, what the regulation would actually look like, um, based on their comments, based on what we submitted, and based on the HAB's comments and everything, all of the information that we've collected over the last 3 months, and put together a draft ordinance for them to look at in August at their August meeting. It's still going to be a work session. It's not going to be a public hearing. They wanted to look at the draft ordinance before it went to public hearing. So they're going to do that in August at their meeting, the second Wednesday. And then if all looks fine, if they feel comfortable, then we'll go to public hearing and they will hold a hearing in September, which is open to the public. It's advertised, it's noticed, and it allows the public to comment on the draft ordinance. And they will take comment and then hopefully make a recommendation to City Council in September at their September meeting. And if that
Is there
happens,
usually good turnout, good participation with public hearings, or it just depends on the particular issue?
it depends on the issue. Yeah. Depends on the issue and who's listening, who's keeping up with the subject. Some hearings are quite busy, and other hearings are you can hear crickets chirping. So, and then yeah, and so that'll be hopefully in September. And then if they make a recommendation, I would anticipate that we would hold first and second reading before City Council, um, either September or October, or October, um, or October, November, depending on how many changes they want, how many, what issues pop up, things like that.
Can, can we in our August meeting also have a review session of that, a draft ordinance? Have that in advance and we can all review it and then discuss that as an agenda item and provide any comments to you, Fred, that to feed into that broader process?
Yeah, we certainly can. Absolutely. We can put that on your agenda for August. We can make it available. Obviously, just like your meetings, planning commission meetings are open to the public, so any HAB members are welcome to join the planning commission at their meeting as well.
Great. And then I guess the one other thing I've heard is, and perhaps this is a a third agenda item for us to queue up in August is some education to potentially prepare for that September public hearing. And there may, there's a lot of, like, we all have, there's a lot of great ideas that we've already shared on this call today. There's also a lot of great material that's already out there that we could leverage, and potentially some that we developed or worked with in the past too, that I could look for. So how does that all sound? Okay.
Can I mail this incentive document to everyone? Am I allowed to do that?
You want to send it to Fred and he'll send it out to the crew?
Okay.
Is that the right protocol, Fred?
Yeah, we can do that. If you send it to me, then I can make sure it gets on record. I just want to make sure, anything that's circulated on the board is also available to the public if the public wants to know. The public, in case the public wants to know what that document is, and we can make sure that gets in the minutes.
Perfect. All right. Great discussion. So then, yeah, let's move on to reports. You want to start with Nancy's report?
Yeah, here's what Nancy sent. Um, yeah, she did indicate that in their budget, in council's budget for the rest of 2025, they did reduce the HAB budget. Um, She said, Fred, you'll have to give HAB exactly what it was cut. Yes, it was the energy efficiency grant. We had, I think, about 10,000 or more earmarked for the energy efficiency grant. When we went through the process of budget cuts, that was one of the things that was cut. That's too bad. As you know, however, the energy efficiency grant was not used in the past. We were trying, as staff, we were trying to get the word out with that energy efficiency grant. We got a few bites, but not too many. So um, I don't perceive there to be much impact, much negative impact with that part of the budget being cut. But we will. I'm going to try to make the request to bring it back in 2026, but don't know what. I haven't received instruction as to what to how to make not how to make that request, but I haven't gotten any information about what to expect for the 2026 budgeting. Um,
Fred, how much did you have to cut? Did you have to trim from the operating budget overall?
well,
Was it?
so I was asked, I think I don't know about the full budget, and I think Nancy would be the best person to reply. I can try to give her a call.
No, that's okay. I just thought directionally if you knew. I know it's public information. If you had a directional amount, it's
Yeah,
zero worries.
I mean, generally there's a general thought, hey, there's a general request, hey, can you cut 10%? Or they ask department heads to identify a budget with a 10% reduction. Fortunately, I didn't have to cut a full 10% after the analysis was made. I don't know if that helps. So in terms of the actual percent reduction of the full budget, I don't know what that was. Let's see. Nancy also said that we reappointed Allison to the HAB for another term. And let's see, she said Amy and Nate heard the ADU discussion last night. And she said off-street parking was the biggest issue with the emergency ordinance. Amy did a great job telling council of why that might be a barrier.
Great.
So that's the report.
See?
And from staff's perspective, staff doesn't have any additional information. I've been working on ADUs, so
Great. Any reports from board members? No? Okay. Well, I guess we're ready to adjourn at 7:10. Thank you all for the good discussion. Good to see you all. Bye.
thank you.